Hello and thank you for clicking to watch this video. My name is Brett Halderson and this video is about how we set up an underwater skill circuit for a public safety pool dive. There are a few online examples of pool drills that public safety dive teams use to keep their skills honed. In 2017, our team decided to expand on what we were doing for pool skills. We have been doing the usual watermanship test and basic scuba skills. We wanted to increase our time in the pool and enhance our techniques prior to using them in open water scenarios. We have put together an underwater pool circuit for the team members to follow. See the attached diagram. The diagram is what we had laid out in the pool. The left side of the diagram is the shallow side of the pool, about 4 to 7 feet, and the right side of the diagram is the deep end of the pool, 12 to 14 feet. The area between the two vertical dotted lines is that area of the pool where there is the greatest depth change from shallow to deep. There are a few things I would like you to keep in mind as you watch this video. The footage is from a training we did in December of 2018. We have members from 3 or 4 different dive teams training in the pool, and each team has different equipment, techniques, and skill levels. The primary focus of this video is to describe the underwater skill stations we set up in the pool. The equipment and techniques used by each diver is unique to their own team. The divers start out in the shallow end of the pool at the top left of the diagram. They then follow the line, which is a rope anchored to the bottom, through the circuit. They do skills at the following stations: a Nomes Swim, a cutting station, marker buoy deployment, body bagging, evidence recovery, the ever popular knot station, an out of air drill, lift bag deployment, and gear exchange. There are 3 stations on the diagram that aren't along the roped circuit. Those are the underwater gear up drill, entangled diver, and confined space escape. I use the underwater gear up drill and the entangled diver station as something for the divers to do as we're getting the skill circuit set up. The confined space escape was new for December's pool dive. In the future, I may include this along the rope circuit, or I may keep it separate as another option for divers to do while the rest of the pool circuit is being set up. It usually takes about 30 minutes for 4 of us to set up the roped skill circuit underwater. The first stage of the underwater circuit is a Nomes Swim. This is a simple but important skill for divers to know well. It's surprising how many dive teams do not practice removing and replacing their dive masks regularly. This is a dive skill that we want our divers to master. One thing to point out is that all pool skills are performed by teams of 2 divers. One diver performs a skill and the other diver is the safety in case something was to go wrong. Like I mentioned earlier, divers are guided through the circuit by a rope anchored to the bottom of the pool. We use weights, anchors, and pulleys to keep the rope as close to the bottom of the pool as possible. We also have cue cards zip tied to the rope to remind divers what skills need to be performed at each station. I'll include a link to those cards. Our cutting station consists of a 5-gallon bucket with 3 different types of material for cutting. The materials are polypropylene rope, small nylon cord, and heavy-duty scuba webbing. You can choose whatever materials work best for you. Our dive team members have 3 different cutting tools on them. They have a sheathed fixed blade knife on their upper left chest area. They have a medical shears and a seatbelt cutter attached to their spare mask pouch. Their spare mask pouch is attached to the BCD belt in front of their right hip. The goal for this station is twofold. First, the divers are reminded that some cutting tools are better than others at cutting different materials. Second, the divers are required to return the cutting tool to its sheath after cutting something and before making the next cut. They also have to cut each type of material with each cutting tool. For our team members, since they have 3 cutting tools and 3 types of material to cut, they are making 9 cuts. And each cutting tool is being drawn from its sheath 3 times. This repetition makes the divers more trained in finding and retrieving their cutting tools. Marker buoy deployment is an easy skill to master, but a diver has to do it a few times to get beyond the usual pitfalls associated with using a small reel. This is one of the skill stations required for resetting for the next dive team. Once the main diver performs a skill, the safety diver resets the station for the next dive team to perform. Body bagging underwater is a cumbersome task, especially in low or no visibility. Doing this in a pool allows the divers to get used to managing the body bag underwater and finding a technique to get the body inside. This is a skill that often takes multiple times to begin to master. We found a PVC dummy works well for our dive training. They hold up well to the type of abuse we put them through, they are relatively cheap, and they are easy to build. I will be creating a video for making a training mannequin like this in the near future. Our evidence recovery station has divers taking a piece of evidence, in this case a pry bar, and placing it in an evidence container for transport. Team members are expected to handle the item to preserve any trace evidence, such as fingerprints, biological matter, or residue. This station also gives the divers experience in opening and sealing the evidence container underwater. Our knot station is just a few 6-foot lengths of rope on a PVC pipe frame. The divers are challenged to tie a bowline, 2 half hitches, a figure 8 on a bight, and a sheep bend. This is probably the least favorite station on the dive circuit. Once our divers are able to master the knots underwater, this will just be another station on the circuit and not something they would rather skip. The out-of-air drill gives divers the opportunity to test their skills and equipment by supplying air to another diver while swimming a short distance. This is also another opportunity for full face mask divers to remove and later replace their masks underwater. We haven't used lift bags during any of our actual call-ups, but it's always possible we will need this skill in the future, so we have a lift bag station along our circuit. It gives our divers the opportunity to use a lift bag to bring a weighted item to the surface. Doing this in the shallow end allows us to do the major portion of the skill while still being able to reset the station quickly. The final skill along the circuit is the gear exchange. This isn't a skill that would directly apply to anything our divers would do on a regular call-out, but it increases the diver's competence in handling their gear underwater. It is somewhat challenging and something different that may benefit them on a future dive. I have been on training dives where a diver became entangled in line and had to remove his BCD to get untangled prior to continuing the training. One of the stations outside of the skill circuit is the underwater gear up drill. Divers begin on the side of the pool with their equipment sitting on the pool bottom. Their mask, if they're using a half mask, and their fins are clipped into the BCD straps. The tank knob has been turned on to charge the regulator lines and then turned off. For our pool dive, there is a bridge that spans across the center of the pool. The diver performing the skill in our training is jumping from that bridge. The diver jumps in and grabs their gear. There is 1 or 2 breaths in the charge lines, but the diver must open the tank valve to get more air. Divers are warned not to hold their breath if, as a last resort, they must go to the surface. The equipment is in approximately 7 feet of water, and there is a safety diver nearby to assist as needed. Once the diver establishes their air supply, they proceed to don all of their dive gear. Again, similar to the gear exchange I described earlier, this doesn't apply directly to public safety diving, but it challenges the divers by putting them in an unfamiliar situation with a problem to solve. This is also one of the stations that takes very little effort to set up. I'll have divers begin at this station while a few of us are setting up the skill circuit. The entangled diver station begins with a diver at the end of a rope and entangled in a net or a series of cords. A safety diver then comes down the rope to provide additional air and solve the entanglement. Solving the entanglement may involve cutting a diver out of the entanglement or just pulling the entanglement off of the diver. The divers then surface together. I know there are many different ways for dive teams to have extra air available for their divers, and there are arguments for each method. This is the method we are currently using. Use whatever method works best for your team. The final station is the Confined Space Escape. This is a recent addition to our pool dive. We are not advocating divers use this skill to enter confined spaces, but should a diver find themselves in a situation where their only escape is through a confined area, we want them to have the previous experience in removing their gear to fit through a restriction in order to escape the situation. The tool we are using is a 55-gallon drum liner with the top and bottom cut off. It's possible for a small diver to make it through with their full gear on. Most divers will have to remove their BCD to fit through the restriction. Thank you for watching this video. I'll have links to the diagram and cue cards in the description below. Take care and safe diving.